Hi, Science 10. So today we're going to work on chemical safety. I have some notes up on the board here that will support some of your learning that's already in your notes package. I'm just going to stand aside for a sec and show them to you so you can write them down in whatever space you might want to. They are similar to stuff that's already in your notes, but anyways, they're for your benefit. So that will be the work for today, and you're already going to see that in Teams. And there, centered like that. So that's where we're at with today's content. Again, you're welcome to go back and pause that if you want to write down any nuggets of information you feel weren't there in the notes package already. We're looking at a couple things today. Fundamentally, we're looking at safely working with chemicals. It's looking increasingly like you guys aren't even going to do chemical safety in my lab. That's just probably the reality. But at the same time, there's a very good chance that you'll be eventually working with chemicals in your workplace. Some of you might go on to an office job and you might not see a whole lot of that, but anyone working in industry, and a lot of you will work in industry, are going to see chemicals that have safety hazards, that have risks associated with them. A lot of you are going to end up taking courses about the topic. A course that's kind of like the basement level for this will be a course on WHMIS, getting WHMIS certification, Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System information. If you're going to go further, maybe you might become a safety officer for your workplace. You're going to have to be familiar with the details of the chemicals you're working with, including the concept of an MSDS. An MSDS is a Materials Safety Data Sheet. They give a lot of information, as you saw in what I wrote on the board here. Your typical MSDS will be several pages long. That being said, there's always going to be certain punchline information that you want to take away from an MSDS of any chemical that you work with, especially because, I think especially because these become very important for being safe on a job site and responding to an emergency that might involve fire, might involve exposure, might involve accidentally ingesting a chemical, might involve breathing it in if it's in a gas form. So what does an MSDS have? Well, you're going to have some supporting information like who you bought it from, the supplier, the different names or names that the chemical might have. You'll have some physical properties of the chemical, like what's its boiling point, what's its melting point. You'll have its appearance. But working into the safety part of that, you're going to be looking at the WHMIS symbols will possibly be in there, and I'll get to those in a sec. The NFPA fire diamond might be in there. That's listed in your note sheet, but it's not always. But what you're always going to have in an MSDS is in what way or ways is this chemical hazardous, and how will you avoid an emergency involving the chemical, and if one does happen, what are you going to do? There's different kinds of emergencies that can happen. Some chemicals are extremely poisonous. Some chemicals are very flammable. Some chemicals react powerfully with other chemicals and cause dangerous chemical reactions that can then start a fire or make new chemicals that are also bad news. So this will be on your MSDS, but I want to back up a sec to the WHMIS symbols. To my knowledge, WHMIS symbols are, and I might be wrong about this, I think they're developed more for use specifically in Canada. I stand to be corrected on that. You're not going to see them in every MSDS, but they're really very useful. WHMIS symbols are typically inside a shape. Sometimes they're inside a circle, sometimes they're in a diamond. Here I have a sample of sodium metal. If you want to see what this stuff can do, look on YouTube, throwing sodium metal in water, and you'll get an idea of why it's got WUMA symbols, specifically why it's got the ones you see. Those are the WUMA symbols for sodium metal. They're self-explanatory. Let's get closer to that. There. And this is all listed in your notes package as well. We see a diamond. We see a diamond that has a fire inside. It's flammable. What you might not have been able to see super well there is there's a picture of a test tube of the chemical that's, I guess it's in a solution. It's dissolved in water or some other chemical, and it's being poured on someone's hand. You don't want to do that. It's being poured on someone's hand, and that is showing that when that happens, bad things happen. It's corrosive to the skin. Your skin is made of protein. If you get a solution with sodium salts in it, like sodium hydroxide, certain sodium salts, it will burn into your skin. It will make your skin into soap, and that's not good. So those are on WUMA symbols. Above that, we have an alert which says danger, and then a little bit more supporting information right there. So the information is often in different forms. Chemicals have been made in different ages. If I go into the chemical cabinet, I can find chemicals made in the 60s and 70s. They have different warning systems, but there's information that can unify them. Here we see under danger that if you expose this stuff to water, it releases hydrogen gas in what is often an explosive reaction. So that's some MSDS information. Also, that's your WUMA symbols right there for sodium metal. Here we see a partial version of what you're going to find in an MSDS for sodium metal. It says, do not breathe dust or vapors. Wear protective gloves, protective clothing, eye protection, face protection. So those are all the things to do to avoid an emergency. Wash hands thoroughly after handling. This is to avoid an emergency. How do you respond to an emergency? If swallowed, rinse mouth. Do not induce vomiting. Call a poison center. If it's inhaled, remove person to fresh air. Keep comfortable. It goes on. What if it gets on your skin? What if it gets on your eyes? Something that's not mentioned in this shortened version of MSDS information is anything about how to deal with the fire. And that turns out to actually be kind of important. If there's a fire involving sodium, you want to be really careful about how you fight that fire. Sodium, when you spray water on it, releases hydrogen gas at high heat. That hydrogen gas can ignite and cause another fire. So if you spray water on a sodium fire, you're going to make the fire bigger. These kinds of warning pieces of information, if it's not on this jar, are going to be on an MSDS for sodium. What I've done, and this is just one example, I came up with another example. There it is. Here's something I've been using in my chemistry labs for my Chem 11 students, online chemistry lab. This is copper 2 chloride. You'll learn about the 2 later. Well, I guess you already kind of know. Here are the WUMA symbols for that. It's poisonous. It also has other toxic effects. That little tree with the fish means don't pour it in the water. It kills fish and other aquatic life. Here's some information about its dangers, its hazards. Don't swallow. It's toxic if they're swallowed. It causes skin irritation, serious eye irritation, and it's very toxic to aquatic life. Okay? So this is not a good chemical to be exposed to. And so don't expose yourself to it. Wear proper eye protection, wear a lab apron, and so on. But if an accident does happen, it then goes on to say, well, what if you do swallow it? What if you do get it in your eyes, or if you do get it on your skin? All that information is then going to be in there. So how is it harmful? What do you do to avoid the harm? And if something bad happens, how do you respond then? So this kind of information will be on your chemicals. Some chemicals have it with better quality level than others. In my experience, if you buy chemicals from a commercial outfit, maybe from a hardware store, but some nasty chemicals that you can get at hardware stores, they're not always going to have an MSDS with them. You should be familiar with where to find these things, and it shouldn't surprise you to learn that they're on the internet. If you do a search for, say, sodium, humus, you're going to find a bunch of junk like you normally find when you do an internet search, but eventually you're going to find these symbols, or you should, because they're on this jar right here. If you do a search for sodium MSDS, then you're going to find, and I can guarantee this, a full material safety data sheet, a full MSDS for sodium. Or actually, you know what, that's a little bit difficult, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Because when you do searches for sodium, you're going to find sodium compounds as well. Now, let me back up a bit. The worksheet you're going to do today, I've posted already to Teams. The worksheet involves internet-based research. I've put down an example chemical for you to work with as a kind of a baseline. I put down copper 2 chloride, actually. I put down a full example of that. I based it on what I saw right here, and I also looked at copper 2 chloride MSDS. If you want to find the MSDS for a chemical, like for example benzene, which is in the list, type benzene, MSDS. If you want to find the WUMA symbols, benzene, WUMAS, they will show up. Again, you're going to come across some stuff that's not correct. So I'm looking for you hopefully to be able to kind of prowl through that a little bit and figure out what's the information I need and what it isn't. If you're ever that safety officer working for a mill or some kind of factory or something like that, then you're going to be responsible for having all your MSDSs printed off in a binder on site and also in a file form. So this is a skill that's useful for you, even if you're not that safety officer, even if you're just working with these chemicals. You should have this learning piece in. I don't really have anything else to say about this because I hope kind of self-explanatory based on the resources I given. Here's what I need you to do before this if you're not quite there yet. I need you to do the reading in the textbook. If you got the textbook, there's a short YouTube video that's specifically about WUMAS, not about MSDS. And then I'd like you to look at the WorkSafe BC website, and it has information, expanded information about MSDSs, material safety data sheets. Check those resources out. Use that information, use that learning to apply it to that worksheet, which I've posted. Due Monday, so you got a bit of time to work on that. I'll probably do a lesson in between then, but that's your current assignment to be working on. I hope that helps, and I'll be in touch.